Okay, now, I was born and raised in Harlem, still live here today,
Right.
never lived anyplace else permanently,
Right.
except Harlem. I was,
Right.
as I said, I was born, as a matter of fact, I was born in Harlem Hospital.
Harlem Hospital, which is
Yes,
still there till this day.
yes, and I always tell people the old building is still there too, the K building.
Okay.
That building is still there, but back when I was born in the 40s, Harlem Hospital had the best maternity unit in the city. And it was good for my mother because there's seven of us,
Right.
seven Samuels, born to Rabbi Lamech and Rabbinate Maddie Samuel. So we were born, had a twin brother
Right.
named Lemuel Elijah. And
Lemuel Elijah.
Lemuel Elijah was my twin brother.
Okay.
I'm the oldest of the twins. As a
Right.
matter of fact, back in those days, they didn't have the sonogram, so they didn't even know there were two of us at first.
Wow.
Yeah, they did not know.
And
And
did your mother have like a did she feel like goodness gracious, this feels more than just
well, she felt that way, but she just thought I was big.
okay.
She felt that way, and added to that, he was born 15 minutes after me, which is a long time. With
Right.
twins, what happened is she had one of those excellent old time doctors. And my mother said after I had been born, they were getting ready to close her up. And the doctor was examining her. And he said, no, he said, there's a baby there. She
Wow.
said that just was because my brother would have not survived.
Right.
Maybe her either.
Right.
So here come my brother after.
Holding
My
holding on to your heel.
holding on to my heel. 15 minutes late. I'm telling you. 15 minutes late. And our names, my name is Judith Deborah. Uh-huh. And as I just told you, my brother's name, Rabbi Matthews, is our godfather, literally. And he gave us those names.
All right. And your brother's name was what again? Can you repeat it?
Lemuel,
Lemuel. Okay.
Lemuel. Middle name
Lemuel.
Elijah.
How was it in Harlem during those days in the 40s? You growing up in Harlem, many of the interviews that I've done with people that come from, well, the Congregation Temple Bethel, a lot of them have ties, or some of them started out in the South, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. And I always ask the point, I always make it a point to ask them about the South and Jim Crow laws or whatever. Obviously, that was not going on in New York City, the Jim Crow laws, but was there segregation or was there racism apparent during those times in New York City when you were coming up as a child in the
Very
40s and
much so.
50s?
Very much so. Let me just tell you about the Southern roots in the
Right.
first. My mother is from Charleston, South Carolina. And my father is from Ocala, Florida. And they obviously met in the North.
Right.
There's lots of Samuels in Florida.
Right.
Any around Tampa, anybody, if you hear coming from Florida and they're Samuels, they're most likely related to me. Because my grandfather had five brothers.
Right.
So there's a lot of Samuels. And then there's also my mother's side from coming out of Charleston, South Carolina. There's also a number of Macmillans too, except the Samuels family tends to be clannish.
Okay.
So wherever you find one Samuels, you're always going to find more than one.
Right.
Yeah, that's how they are. And both came from fairly big families. But here's the interesting thing about my parents. My mother had like 5 or 6 siblings, only 2, she and her brother survived to adulthood. They all died as children.
Wow.
And my grandfather, Prince Aaron Macmillan, finished raising his 2 children.
Okay.
So that's what happened on my mother's side. That's the Macmillan side. He finished raising his children. He wouldn't let I guess he was so upset about losing his wife, his children over time.
Right.
So he wouldn't, my mother said her aunt wanted to keep her, but he wouldn't allow it. He wouldn't give up his children.
Okay.
something similar, but my mother was fairly young when she came north. She probably was in her early teens. If she was, maybe not even a teen yet. She and her
Okay.
older brother.
Okay.
Something similar happened with my father. He had lost, he didn't lose as many children, but he had my oldest aunt who introduced my father to law in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
and my father, and they were like teenagers,
Right.
or and they came north, and their father finished raising Fred Samuels. That's their father. He finished raising them. So that's a very interesting story. That fathers, those are the kind of men back in the days. They took
Right.
care of their children and they raised their children.
Right.
And my mother always told me about her father. This is an interesting story. She always told me about her father. She said she missed so much having a mother. She said she wasn't mistreated. She's because my grandfather was very, very handsome, her father. And so the women used to be nice to her because they liked him.
Right.
So she said she never was mistreated, but she was always miss having a mother.
Mm.
You know,
The
so
care,
that's
the care of a mother is
the
different
care
than a
of a
father.
real of your own mother.
Right.
That was never, was nothing like that. That's why she was so good to and close to with her children because she
Right.
missed having a mother.
Yeah, because
So
I could imagine after what your grandfather went through, he probably didn't want to. He probably just wanted to raise his children and not let anyone get close to them. He didn't want
yeah,
to go through that
yeah,
ordeal again or that trauma. He probably
right.
didn't want to get close to any woman in that way because he couldn't deal with it anymore. So he just
Yeah, until
raised his
later.
daughters and said,
Yeah,
"I'm
until
go
later.
right,
We were all big children and everything when he finally got another wife and they moved to New Jersey. Now we have history in New Jersey too, meaning that a lot of the Samuels went to a town called Montclair, New Jersey.
Montclair. Yeah, that's a
Yes.
nice town.
A lot of them went there as servants and stuff. A lot of the Samuels, as I said, when you see Samuels, you're gonna see more than one. And a lot of them, a lot of my elders settled over there in Montclair, and they went there as servants, and they wound up owning those houses.
Oh wow,
That's my father's background. A
right,
lot of his cousins, his first cousins, and everything were over there in Montclair. As
right,
a matter of fact, my mother and father met, even though they wind up in Harlem, they met in New Jersey.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go through Montclair, New Jersey every day. It's a pretty you do
It
have a
was,
lot of black folks in Montclair,
yeah, and you can imagine how nice it was many years ago.
right? It's still nice now.
Yeah,
It's
yes,
not
it
that
is. It's
bad.
still nice now.
It's not
It's
bad
still
at
nice
all at
now.
all.
Yes, but I mean, you can imagine how
Back
really,
then, right? Those houses, I could imagine, yeah, because you
yeah,
could see the beauty in the homes out
yeah.
there,
And my elders, my father's first cousins and all, they had those houses till the end. Most of them are gone now,
right?
but they had those houses till the end.
Right.
Um, yeah, they went as servants mostly.
Okay,
So,
so
sorry,
you told me that your oldest aunt, you didn't mention her name, but she introduced your father
to
to
law.
this way of life. How did
Yeah.
that? How was that? How did that come about? How
Now,
did your aunt? Who did your aunt meet? How did she begin her journey? How did that come all about? And your father being Rabbi Lamech Samuels, right?
yes, my father was
Okay.
Lamech Samuels. Here's
Okay.
how she met Rabbi first. How she managed it, I don't know every detail of that, but my
Who's that? Rabbi Matthew, right?
Rabbi Matthews, I'm
Uh
talking
huh.
about. What happened was she was associated with Sister Gail. Now, Sister, they were founding members of Commandment Keepers, right? Sister
Right.
Gail was one of the elders, right? And she and Sister Gail were in business together. So I think as a result of that, she and Sister Gail became a part of that, and Sister Gail's whole family too. I'm going to
Right.
tell you some of the family members in a minute.
Right.
They became associated that way,
Right.
and she was the first one that would go to rabbis what do you call it? When he used to be out doing street preaching.
Street
Back
preaching.
in the day.
Okay.
Oh yes, yeah. That's what they did in Harlem. They did that all over Harlem. They would put up ladders and they would do like something like what you see Malcolm X would be
Right.
doing.
In the
That's what
movie,
they
right.
did. That's what they did too, and that's what Rabbi was doing. And that's how my aunt encountered him with Sister Gail, and they started following him. They're like founding members of Commandment Keepers. They started following him, and sometimes it's take a little more time to bring the men along. And she
Right.
said, told I remember her saying, she told my father, "You have to meet this man. You have to see him."
Right.
That's how we came associated. The family became associated with Rabbi Matthews. And my father just took to it like a homing pigeon. Let me tell you, my father was one of the best Hebrew readers ever. It was just that he had a natural knack for it. So when
Okay.
he started studying, that's he was one of the primary readers because he
Okay.
just took the language like that.
Okay.
Also down in Florida,
Right.
my father had at least not his father but two uncles because the twins came from his line because he had
Okay.
twin uncles,
Okay.
and two of his uncles were ministers. So he always had a familiarity with religion.
Okay.
He came here, as I said, they were teenagers. My
Right.
father must have been about 18, I think. But he always had that familiarity. So it wasn't easy for him to connect. As a matter of fact, I don't think he ever connected here with any type of church,
Right.
he left the South.
Right.
So it came so natural to him. And I have to say this about my father. My father and Rabbi Smalls. Rabbi Smalls was Rabbi Matthew's right-hand man.
Right.
A lot of pictures you see the two of them together.
Right.
My father and Rabbi Smalls are two of the most spiritual men I have ever met. Once they learned what they learned, it was just an aura on those two men, more than all of the rabbis. There was just a particular aura about them. And once they knew what they knew, they wouldn't even debate you about what they knew. So they gained a spiritual connection to being Israelites. Not just the information, not just the knowledge, more than a lot of those rabbis who didn't,
Right.
from what I observed, didn't have the deep spiritual connection that they had. They just knew. It was just a knowing. Once they learned, there was nothing else that needed to be said to them about
Right.
anything.
Right.
So they said that's my biggest memory of them. When you were in their presence, you felt the ruach. My
Hallelujah.
father and Rabbi Smalls of all, and there were many rabbis, let me tell you, and I mean trained,
Right.
but Rabbi Smalls, bless his memory, and my father had a particular aura. Rabbi Matthews was hot all the time. He would always be putting you in your place and this and that and other. They
Right.
wouldn't even bother. They
Okay.
wouldn't. They had, you heard that expression, "Don't suffer a fool." Well, that
Yeah.
was their attitude. That was Rabbi. That was Rabbi Smalls and my father's attitude. They couldn't tell you anything. They wouldn't even deal with it. So I had to remember that because I always have to remember Rabbi Smalls was I just was so blessed. I had some dynamic men in my life.
Right.
So blessed.
That's a blessing.